Thanks very much indeed to the PNA for the invitation to address you this afternoon. And when Seamus spoke to me a few weeks ago, I wasn't certain whether the report that has been completed would have been accepted and endorsed and given a mandate to move on with it. But we have now received that, and I'm delighted with that, and I'll go through that in a few minutes. So, for the last couple of years, and it took probably twice as long as we had first anticipated, we've had a working group made up of management and union representatives dealing with this challenge of violence and aggression in the workplace. And I just want to pay tribute briefly to one or two people in that group in particular. Kevin McKenna, who's one of your own, psychiatric nurse, along with a few other strings to his bow, was the principal author of the report, and Kevin in his own right would be a world expert and acknowledged as a world expert on this theme at this stage, and it's fabulous to have somebody like Kevin with his reservoir of information and knowledge around this available to the group. And I can tell you that the report that has been published is so thorough that there isn't a line in it, there isn't a comma in it that you can argue with. It is absolute in its evidence base, in its robustness, in the rigour with which it was dealt. And we most certainly have a very strong platform from which to get on now with the actions, which I'll come back to. But Seamus Murphy here has also been a member of that working group. And as in all working groups, you get those who work hard and those who do little. Seamus was one of those who drove that group from start to finish, raised the alarm when we were dragging our heels a little bit, raised the alarm when the system was frustrating our efforts because we had interruptions, whether it was strikes a couple of years ago, whether it's a recession in more recent times, and people get distracted with other things. But Seamus has been excellent on the group and will also be on the steering group that moves forward with this. And I just want to acknowledge, Seamus, your huge contribution to it. Brendan Drum has signed off on it at this stage. We thought we might have a formal launch, but with all of the distractions that are there at the moment with the economic climate and the recession and so on, he quite rightly felt that it wasn't appropriate to pull a group together and to have a launch and to have a bit of a fanfare. And he has, though, given us a letter of approval to proceed with the implementation of the actions. And I have that letter here, and there's a position statement that goes with it, which is more elaborate than the letter in its own right. But it most certainly gives us a mandate to get on with implementation and indeed get on with it with some urgency. And I just want to acknowledge Professor Drum's endorsement of the report. We are now up and running and we will move on with some pace. The primary function within the HSE that has responsibility for ensuring that this is implemented is, strictly speaking, the HR department under Sean McGrath. But Sean McGrath is going to rely, as per the recommendations in the report, on a partnership group that will be the steering group for the implementation of it. And there will also be a central project office that will be a sort of an engine room for making things happen, for driving it and steering it over the next couple of years. Kevin McKenna will be part of that. Seamus is part of the steering group, and again, we will be glad to have that. One of the most significant things, though, that has come about with the report development and the report implementation has been the fact that it has been done in partnership. And violence and aggression, and I'll give you some statistics in a few minutes, but violence and aggression in the workplace is a big deal. And the best way to tackle it is through partnership. It's where staff, unions, management all get around the one table and work at it together. That's what was the philosophy in producing the report. That's the philosophy going forward. And we will have, in the steering group going forward, 3 union representatives, 3 management representatives, some world experts, some educationalists, some legal advice. But that's the philosophy. I was CEO up in the Northwest up until the HSE came in 2005. And I was part of a group of CEOs who met once a month under the heading of HEBE and under the auspices of other settings. Before that, I was General Manager in places like Sligo and Letterkenny General Hospitals and St Conal's Hospital Psychiatric Service. And this problem of violence and aggression in the workplace, and I put my hands up and say this, and I've said it before in this forum, went over my head. Somehow or other, the extent of violence and aggression in the workplace didn't catch my attention, didn't catch the attention of my colleagues, never came up on an agenda in any serious way, if at all, in that forum of CEOs or senior managers. Somehow or other, this theme went over our head. And I'm absolutely astounded when we work at this report for the last couple of years, when I can quote some statistics like 2/3 of all staff are verbally abused in the course of a year. 1/3 of all staff are threatened in the course of a year. 1/4 of staff are physically assaulted in the course of the year. That's everything from minor to major. If my daughter was going to a school or a disco and there was one chance in 4 that in the course of the year she was going to be physically assaulted, there's probably a disco she wouldn't go to or a school she wouldn't go to. It is a truly serious matter, and I am just astounded when I see statistics like that there that have emerged, and somehow or other this theme didn't grab the attention of management in the way that it should have. That being said, there were many occasions when I presented certificates at courses that were held for physical intervention techniques. The Broadmoor group were over and so on, but it still didn't catch my attention in the way it needed to catch my attention. It was only just one little element of it that I was exposed to. I didn't realise, for instance, that it needed to capture the attention of people when they were doing the risk management and safety statements, and that the level of support that's required needs to be something that's structured and encouraged and policies developed around. It was just one little element of it, the physical intervention, how to grab somebody and hold them down and so on. And it was all very dramatic and all of that there. But it begs the question, why is it that it didn't get our attention? And it may be that I was a poor CEO, and that probably was the case, but somehow or other, the reporting of it didn't reach people's attention. Somehow or other, the fact that there is psychological damage as well as physical damage wasn't getting sufficient attention. Something was masking what was going on. People were reluctant to report it. People maybe thought that it was par for the course in the service that they may have worked in, if you're in childcare, if you're in the ambulance, if you're working alone, psychiatric service, casualty departments, community welfare officer refusing somebody grant aid, whatever it may be, and it may have been perceived as part and parcel of the job. But something was masking and suppressing all this information. And what I am saying now is that one of the jobs that we have to do is create that awareness in the system generally that this is a big deal and it needs attending. So just very quickly, I don't intend to give you a full briefing on the report, and there's the full report and there's a small executive summary, but there is no one single answer or simple solution to the problem of violence and aggression in the workplace. It's a complex problem. And just to go back over some of the stuff that we debated in our own working group, every risk situation is a function of the play of 4 forces, if you like. If you take the individual service user, young, old, male, female, well, unwell, in their home setting, in a hospital setting, whatever it may be, there are just a lot of considerations there in relation to one individual user. The staff member may have come in from home with all sorts of difficulties, may be young, may be old, may be worn out.